All right, welcome back. This is part 4 of the beginner level of email automation in Airtable. So now that we have the foundation set up for the recurring report, the last piece that we're going to focus on in the beginner level is refining the content. So we're going to look at different ways that you can structure and format the data across tables and roll that data up into your email reports. All right, so let's dive in.
Email automation in Airtable, beginner level. Part 4. In this part, you'll learn how to build formatted report content using formulas, combine multiple fields into a single report-ready text block, use rollups to aggregate data across linked tables, handle empty or missing data gracefully, and roll individual reports up to the department level.
In the previous lesson, we had a look at how to create a grid of records from the data that we found in the find records step previously. And that's great because it sort of structures things for you. You don't have to do too much work to get a really nice looking report. Now, there are of course other ways to format that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that grid of records. Rather than putting the records in as a table, you could format the data yourself using markdown, or eventually what we're going to look at in the next intermediate section, HTML. So for now, we're going to stick with markdown and we're going to look at how we can leverage bold and line breaks to organize the data ourselves in record using formula fields. So what we can do is we can create a formula field. I'll call it task report info. And what you can do is you can use the concatenate function to join fields and then also hard code text as well. So I'll give you an example of that. So you could, for example, say, let's concatenate the task name. So I'll select that. And then you separate everything that you want to join by a comma. And then I'm going to hard code a text value. So I'm going to put a colon and then a space. And then I'm going to put a line break. And then I'm going to, after the line break, I'll write, and then after the line break, I'll write due date. And then I'll close that. So let's see what that looks like. So if we look at the first task here, we see update and clean outdated documentation. And then we have the due date. So that's exactly what I wanted. So you'll notice how it put the line break there. Now what I want to do is I want to make the name of the task bold, and I want to make the due date bold as well. And then after the due date, I want to actually pull in the due date. So let's try that. So the task name, we're going to actually surround with strings, and we're going to put double asterisks there. And let's see if that does it. Good. And I just realized we don't really need that colon there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, but I'll leave the line break. So that's exactly what I want. And then I want to do the same thing around due date. So I'm going to put 2 asterisks around due date and the colon as well. So check that out. There they are. And then I'm going to pull in the due date after that. So I'll put a space there, and then I'll bring in due date. Now, due to the fact that we're concatenating this is likely going to look a little funky. So this is like an ISO date string, and what we want to do is format that. So let's say datetime format. So datetime format, it takes the datetime as the first input parameter right here, and then after that, after a comma, you have the format string. So with our case, I think what we want is, let's do month, day, and then year. And let's see what that looks like. So that looks fine. And I think what we'll do is we'll, instead of using hyphens, we'll use slashes. See what that looks like, so that it's more formatted like the original due date. So that's looking good. So we do have that starting 0 for months that only have one number. Let's go ahead and switch that to 1M and 1D, and I think that should do the trick. So let's just see what that looks like in a case where the day is a single digit, so it should be 2/4/2026. And it looks exactly the same. So that's what we want. So what are we ultimately doing with this? We're gonna be rolling it up to the department level. So how do we do that? Like, how do we get this data into the department table? So the way you do that is using roll-up fields. And we can't just roll it up right to the department because we don't have a link to the department yet in the task. So what we could do is we could roll it up first to people. So let's go ahead and try that, because you'll see that the tasks are linked to a person in the people record. So let's create a roll-up field. And we're going to roll up from tasks. And the field that we're going to be rolling up is the task report info. And instead of an array unique, we're going to concatenate. There you can see we have all the tasks for each person now listed in this field, but it's kind of coming in one after the other. So you'll notice how, we have this one and then immediately the next one starts. So we actually want to separate those. So what we can do is we can go over to the tasks table and we can add a line break at the very end. So we can say line break. And now when we go back to people, they should be separated, which they are. Now, I think we're gonna want one more line break, so I'll go add another one. So double line break. Go back to people and confirm. So now there's a full line in between those tasks, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so now that we have that there, we can roll that up to the department level. Before we do that, we want to put the person's name above their tasks. So to do that, we can create a new column that's also a formula field. And we can call this person's task block. Just an example. And then again, let's concatenate. And we're gonna add the full name of the person. And then we're gonna put a line break, maybe even a double line break. We'll see how that looks. And then we're going to reference the task report info. And we'll close that out. Let's see what that looks like. So you'll notice that some people do not have tasks assigned to them. And so in that case, what we could do is we could say, if task report info, then we'll render it, and then we'll close that. And if not, nothing will happen. Okay, so now you can see that we have the person's name and then their tasks under here. Now I'm gonna do one other thing with the formatting of the person's name. I'm gonna make that bold as well. So we'll just surround it with asterisks. And you're gonna see what all that's for very soon. So now we have the person's task block. So if I go up to departments, which are linked to the people, now I can roll up all of the person's tasks for each department. So we'll create a roll-up field. And I'll call this one department member tasks. And we're gonna be rolling this up from the people table. We're gonna select the person's task block and we're gonna concatenate that. So now you can see that we have all of the individuals who are on the team along with their tasks. So real quick, let's just have a look at what that looks like when we render it. It's not done yet, but it's always good to kind of check in. So we no longer need to find records because we're not leveraging that anymore. So here's the weekly report data. We can pull in from each department the department member tasks that we just created. So let's go ahead and preview that. We might have to repull the data. And then let's repull the data So the find record step, I'll just test that again. And you can see that the department member tasks data is pulling in now. Let's go ahead and test the input list real quick. And now we can generate the preview. So we're currently looking at the people weekly report. Hi all, here's the weekly report data. That's looking good. I mean, it's doing what I would expect. So it's putting the person's name in bold, task name in bold, because we surrounded these by double asterisks, as well as the due date, and then it lists the due date. So that's what we expect to see so far. Now let's make it better. So we're gonna go back to the tasks and we're gonna add some additional information here. So I think now that I'm looking at it, we probably wanna have the description of the task beneath the task name. And then I think what we should do is we should have the task name as sort of like a field. So we'll write task name and then we'll show the task name right after that. So we'll have the double asterisks around task name, and then the task name itself will be just regular text. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so we have the task name and then the due date. And then let's also add the task description. So I'll go ahead and add that before the double line break here. So we'll say task description, surround that with double asterisks, and then we'll put a line break there as well. And then we'll add that description. So let's see what that looks like. It's going to be a little longer. Awesome. So it looks like we didn't put a line break before task description. So let's go and do that. So now that should be on a different line, which it is. So that's exactly what I want. So if we go back and preview that, we need to repull the records here to get the freshest data. And then we can go and generate the preview. There it is. So here's the weekly report data. So the individual, the name of the task that's assigned to them when it's due, the description of the task. So that's looking good. I think I definitely want to have a little bit more space between each task. So I think what we can do is we can put some underscores here, and then I'll put another line break after that. So let's go ahead and preview that. So first we need to pull again, so test the find record step, and then let's generate the preview. So yeah, so you see the person, you see their tasks. So I think now that I look at it again, we probably want to have this break be between the person's tasks. So like we have Sophie, and I think her tasks can sort of be together, and then this line can be before the next person. So let's remove that line from the task level. And then let's put it at the person level. So we'll put the underscores at the person's task block right at the end, and then we'll put a line break. And let's pull in that test data again. Generate the preview. Okay, so then we see the person, in this case, Sophia, her tasks, and then a line break before the next person. That's exactly what we want. All right, now let's say that you only want to show tasks that are in progress. So there are some here that have been completed. We don't necessarily want to put that in the weekly report. So we just want to show everything that has a status of to do, so that we're only showing the tasks that are in flight. So you could do that at the people table level as well. And you could click on that rollup field that we created earlier for the task. So task report info rollup from tasks. And then you could only include linked records from the task table that meet certain conditions. So where status is to do. And now we're only rolling up the tasks that are to do, right? Another thing that you could, of course, do if you don't want to do it that way is you could have the status of the task, be one of the fields. So you could create it like we did these other fields here, and then put the value of the status after. You could section them off if you do want to include complete tasks. So you could have, you know, the task name, the due date, the task description, and the status, and then group them by complete and to do. You know, you could do that by having two of these. So you could say this one is going to be the to do tasks. And then we could duplicate that, and we could say complete tasks. Right? And then at the person's task block, we can say something like, you know, currently working on, we could say something like tasks to do. And we could make that bold as well. So surround that with the asterisks and then have a line break. And then we could do the same thing after the to-do tasks. So we could have the complete tasks. Save that. So tasks to do, right? The task name, the due date. So all those, and then the complete task. Now, you know, what about if the person doesn't have any complete tasks? Well, in that case, you could put a little condition here in the aggregation formula that says if this value exists, we return that value. And then if not, we return none as a string. So now you'll see for folks who do not have to-do tasks, it says none. And then the same thing for the complete. So we could say if concatenate values, we'll return that. And if not, none. There we go. So now when we go and render that, let's pull that in and then let's preview it. So now we have all the tasks to do for the person, complete tasks, none. So you'll see that there needs to be a line break before the separator at the people level. So let's go ahead and add that. So building these out can often be an iterative process, and I'm intentionally leaving some of these out so that I can demonstrate that to you. So we'll go ahead and test that, pull the data in, and generate the preview. And now we have pretty nicely formatted report that we're going to send via the Gmail integration. So looking at it, looks pretty good. Oh, look, that doesn't look good. So let's fix that. So that's before the complete tasks. So we need to put a line break there. So that one I didn't do on purpose. I actually messed that up, but that's part of it. So we'll test the action and generate the preview. And now it's finalized. Yeah, looking good. Oh, looks like Evelyn is slacking a little bit. All right, so that's a quick look at how you could format reports in Record and then roll it up to a finalized report, leveraging Markdown for the formatting. We're going to expand on this quite a bit in the intermediate section using HTML. So this is straightforward. You sort of write these things once, it pulls in the values, and it sends. This method is nice for like reports like this that are going to be sent out each week that don't change too often. You know, you might only have a handful of them, maybe maximum a dozen or so. So this approach works really well when you don't expect too many different types of emails. The number of message variations is quite small. The templates don't change frequently, and the amount of automations that you're going to be using are minimal. So if you know that you're not going to be sending out hundreds of different templates from this base, you can absolutely get away with the techniques that we just looked at. But as email variation grows, a few different pressure points show up. So due to the fact that every email is hard-coded,
You have to go and click around and change the text and change the triggers and conditions and the times, select the placeholders. So none of this means that the approach is wrong, but if you're in that situation and you realize that you need more templates, frequent changes, more flexibility, more scalability, that's what the next level is for. See you there.